Hey, welcome back to my channel. It's Dr. B here, and I actually have a really special thing to share with you tonight, which is a math assignment that you could use at, I would say this would be probably a kindergarten, first grade, second grade. You might even bring it up again in fourth or fifth grade using more items and more complicated stuff. So you could adapt this for probably K through 5. I would think that this lesson would be something that you would want to repeat multiple times with different types of objects till children start to feel more comfortable with it. This is a hands-on thing like most of my stuff because you guys know I'm an experiential teacher. If you didn't know it, I hurt my finger. I haven't been able to type. It's been a bummer. So anyway, if you are interested in a math lesson, let's get this party started. Okay, so you take a bunch of materials. It could be anything. So I even have used the kids as the materials. So here's what you want to think about. You want to try to show them a visual of some kind in which they are somehow interacting with something in their hands. Because we know that autism and also just regular kids that have a lot of extra energy, your kids with ADHD, your kids who lack focus, your kids who don't learn traditionally. So our non-traditional learners love hands-on experiential things. This is one of those lessons where you could do this with anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a table, not like a kitchen table. Not like a kitchen table. What we're going to create is a table like a graph, where we will show how many of each thing we have, however we decide to classify it. So for me at the grade level I teach, color makes sense because that's something that they already know how to sort, hopefully. And they do like candy hearts. But the only problem is some of them will always disappear. So always start out with more than you think you're going to need. And know that if you tried to graph it ahead of time, it won't work if it's candy, okay? All right, here are some examples of the types of graphs we're talking about today. We're talking about tally charts and we're talking about bar graphs. But you can also use things like picture graphs and pie charts to show things. And I'll give a little bit of an example of how you can turn a bar graph into a picture graph. So tally charts are pretty cool. They are, you have one tick mark for each thing and you do 4 straight lines down and then 1 across. And if you see these tally marks, then there's probably a tally chart somewhere on there. Sometimes, the tallies are for things like basically shapes that I see. So here's an example of shapes. We've got tally counting. So just this is tally marks representing the numbers, which is cool. And then we've got an example with kids' favorite snacks. They probably did a poll in the classroom and they did tally marks to show how many kids like each type of snack. Okay, so we're taking a look at bar charts next, and you can see that there's a bar charts explained. And this is basically there's a little tally table on the left-hand side there that tells you how many students in the class liked whatever drink it is. And then over here we have the actual drinks that people liked. So we have soda, and it tells you how many kids like soda, how many kids prefer like water, that kind of thing. So basically, a bar chart is a representation that's visual of the tallies that we took in the poll, whatever that tally is. And again, you can do this with lots of types of data. You could even just do it with number of items. It doesn't matter. So moving on to our next thing here, we've got birthdays graphed on a bar chart here, where birthdays for each students of the month. So you'd basically make a tally chart for each month and show how many birthdays were in each month. And what you're looking at here is if you look at May, for example, you can see there are 8 birthdays in May by looking over at the y-axis. So the x-axis is horizontal, the y-axis is vertical. And so you would look and go, okay, in June, if I look over on the y-axis, there are 10 birthdays in red there. Okay, so moving on to the next, we have different batches, and we have the number of athletes in each batch. And you can see there's 100, and it looks like somewhere between, it looks like 118 in batch 1, and then batch 5 has like 50, okay? So we're looking here at another bar graph. We have the number of books read on the x-axis. We got the number of students on the y-axis. And it looks like students who read between 25 to 30 books, there's only like 3 students who did that. But if you look at students who read 15 to 20 books, it looks like there's 11 students who did that. We have favorite colors, or I'm sorry, favorite fruits in the class. And so you can see the tally table up on the upper right hand side there. And you can see the number of kids that like the fruits on the y-axis. And the x-axis is the different fruits. Okay, we have a really cool graph here. This is something that I would like to do in my class. This is their eye colors, and they're graphing this data. And the bar chart is more of like a physical bar chart, which I think is really cool. So we see eye colors on the x-axis and then the number of people on the y-axis. And they actually have it like a pictograph representation. So you can do a bar graph that is a pictograph. So each pictograph it has like a certain amount of space or a certain amount of measurement that's going to represent each increment. So each little eyeball there is the same size. So we can easily see there's 4 people that have this many, that have, I can't read it, it's too far, that have dark eyes. And then we've got only 2 students that have blue eyes, right, in the class. All right, so moving on here, we have a really cool graph about the zoo animals that kids like. And this is a pictograph, but also a bar chart. And it looks like we have the animals on the x-axis and then the kids on the y-axis. And since the kids are labeled by name, we don't necessarily, we could see the number of kids because it's a pictograph, okay? But a pictograph is a type of bar chart. All right, then here we have the kids are over here on the kids are represented by the different bars here, and we can see the number of kids is on the x-axis, and on the y-axis we have the types of pets. So for example, cats, it looks like 10 students in the class like cats. Now what I like about this is a physical graph, meaning the kids created it from, looks like construction paper, and they glued the things on. The teacher probably wrote the stuff on there. The kids wrote little blurbs on there telling, a little bit more about what they like. And so this is something that the kids are going to actually remember, because this is a hands-on activity. And that's what we're talking about here, is turning these tally tables and bar graphs, bar charts into a physical activity that they can create an actual something that they can touch. And this is a great example of that. So I work in kindergarten, first grade, that kind of level. So I just had February, so it's somewhere in February past Valentine's Day at this point, but I've lost all track of time. I guess that's because I'm too busy. All right. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take the item. So we have like an orange candy heart. So I'm going to take a whiteboard or a piece of paper and write the word orange on it, preferably in an orange marker. If you don't change them by color, make them all the same colors. Like use a black marker for all of them, or use the color of the word. So if it's an orange, then you should spell the word orange in orange. That would be the most effective way to do this. Okay, so once you have all of your colors, and I'm just keeping my example simple, we're using some Trader Joe's candy hearts, and we are dumping them onto the whiteboard that has the classifications. Now, we've got the orange ones are all going under the orange section on the whiteboard. The white are going into the white section, and the pink are going to go into the pink section. Then we're going to add a tally mark for each of the different colors. Now, you notice that I did use a black marker to write the word white because there's no white marker. But I did use pink for the pink and orange for the orange to help kids. Kids do like a challenge though, so if your kids are at a higher level, rather than write it in that color, maybe just write them all in black. Okay, so once you get them sorted, or the kids have them sorted, they're going to go ahead and they're going to count how many they have in each category. Once you get each of the sections counted up, you're going to create tally marks for the items in that category, like I'm doing here. So you'll see the 4 tick marks and then 1 tick mark that goes across. And so that's representing there are 18 of the oranges. And it looks like we've got 6 of the white ones and 4 of the pink ones. So this is particularly great for English language learners because everything is visually represented and they can see the steps carried out in addition to hearing about the steps in maybe the language that isn't their first language. So math is one of those universal languages. Now, I have my students write the total number on their whiteboard. So the tally marks are already added up and ready to be added to the final graph. So next we're going to create our bar graph to represent the tally marks that are in our tally table. And so I'm going to go ahead and set up my data this way with the numbers on the x-axis and the colors of the candy hearts on the y-axis. And the only reason I did this is because my whiteboard is kind of shaped this way and it made the most sense to me, but you could absolutely flip it the other way. So the colors are on the x-axis and the numbers are on the y-axis. And actually that'd be a more traditional way to do it. But I thought showing you the data on a screen, it would be easier this way. So we had 18 orange candy hearts. And so I'm drawing a bar that goes all the way to the 18 and coloring it in. And then at the very end, writing 18. Then for the 6 candy hearts in white, I'm representing it in green because my black marker was dying, if you couldn't tell in the last little clip I showed. Then we're also going to show the 4 candy hearts as a bar for 4. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a pictograph out of the data. And I didn't size it perfectly, but you can get the idea that the kids will put, the items into the bar so they can kind of see the data actually represented by the actual items. This is another just hands-on and visual experience that will help the kids to understand that the bar represents the actual number of items that are represented. Of course, if you're using bigger items, you're not going to be able to do this, but you see they don't fit perfectly. And if I had done this in a bigger space, I probably could have done it that way where we could have lined them up, or I could have used a simpler example where we don't need 18. So we know the kids are going to eat some of the candy no matter what age they are, even if they're adults, because I taught college and they definitely ate the candy hearts. All right, so back to what I was saying about this graph. So you're going to have the kids use tally marks, like, or was it, 1, 2, 3, 4? It's 5 total, right? So you're counting by 5s. So I like to show a fancy video ahead of time called Counting by 5s. And I usually like to graph this on the plane where it's like, I guess the x-axis would be, the number of items you have in that category. So, right. So you want to start with a small example like this, and then you can do it again with a bigger example, and then again with a bigger example, and then again until they're able to do this with however much information you spit out at them. And then you can start taking this idea and applying it to other areas of your instruction. So if you're like me and you teach a grade where it's like you have to teach all the subjects, this applies to all the subjects. So you could graph stuff that's data for social studies, or you could even graph data that is for art. If you want to, you'd be like, how many colors do you see in this Picasso? Let's graph it. All that interdisciplinary stuff that teachers like to do. Eat them. Now that we have the information represented on the whiteboards, you may eat these as I graph, okay? This keeps the kids very happy. If you can't eat in your classroom, then I would suggest having them turn the candy hearts back in little plastic baggies to you, and then you can distribute them later when they're outside or something. So, or you can just give them fresh ones, because isn't it kind of gross if they're all handling them and then they eat them? I don't know. Just your call. You're the instructor. So I've done this with college students, and I've done this with, kindergartners. So this is something that it literally will work for any class, and you can use it to graph data. And you know what? It just makes understanding how tables are created a little more interesting, because you're somehow like touching the stuff, and then you're like seeing the stuff that you just touched, like graphed. And you know what? The kids are going to remember this way more than seeing just a stupid slide on the PowerPoint, okay? So, because they made the slide, and you could take a picture, and then like you could actually post pictures of all the classes that have ever done it. So you could be like, look it, I've been doing this with my students for the past 5 years. Here's like other kids who also did the same thing. Does your graph look the same as their graph? And then you could do comparisons. Isn't it beautiful? So basically, when you are trying to introduce the lesson, you need to make sure to be really excited about it. It doesn't matter like what you decided to use, even if it's like different colored toothpicks. You know what? It's something different that maybe the kids haven't seen yet. And it sure as hell beats just sitting there doing the same old thing. And it gets the kids excited because they're like, they get to play with stuff and do things. However, you have to take into account the age of your children. My kids would probably choke on a toothpick, so they couldn't use toothpicks, right? But if you're working with like high schoolers, they could probably manage a toothpick without killing somebody. I don't know, it's questionable. But you could also use like non-edible items too. But I would not recommend anything smaller than a Scrabble tile, right? So use your best judgment when you're choosing the materials that you're going to use with your students, especially if they're special ed students, and especially if they are, the pica type where they like to eat stuff. So we have a couple of those. Now, let's just say like I accidentally eat some of the data. It's so fun. The kids are going to love this. And when I say kids, I even mean college students as kids, because that's how I think of them sometimes. They like to play just like everybody else. Okay. Ooh, that was delicious. So in terms of ability differences, this is a really great assignment that you can give different jobs to different students. You can actually give the work, you could plan it ahead of time to where, you assign each kid in the group to a specific color ahead of time. So they would get an assignment. And if you're using some kind of, I know we use like Kagan strategies at one of the schools I teach at. And I know some people use like whole brain learning. These are things where you already have like a structure built there. The kids learn kind of like the parameters and the rules of each of the structures. And so, for example, like you could do like round robin or rally robin, those kinds of things. Or you could do think, pair, share, pair and square. You could use all those strategies in terms of assigning roles. When I present math as being really fun, and we're like solving problems with math, kids start to understand and make the connection between, oh, math is just like another life problem, because we want to show kids how we're using math or what we can use math for them to make those connections. And so when we're graphing candy hearts, like you can literally tell them, you could graph anything, like any set, like at home. Go home and see what you have in your room and see if you can make one of these graphs by yourself. See if you can graph something. And kids are going to be more likely to try to graph things in their life, including college students, by the way. They will also start making graphs if you ask them to. So just suggest that they try doing that and see if they can do it on their own. And if they run into a problem, then the next time we do it, they'll probably get that solved for them. And so when they're taking their standardized math tests or their placement tests or whatever it is, they're going to score higher on this section on creating tables and graphing things, because they're going to have a natural interest in graphing stuff, because you have an interest in graphing stuff. You're like, yes, we get to graph data today. This is going to be so fun. But remember, you want to keep this as fast-paced as possible. And the more forethought you put into it, obviously, the more smoothly it's going to go. Usually the first time you do something like this, there's things that go wrong, and that's okay. And kids are pretty forgiving with this sort of thing. But you're going to try it again, right? So if you make a mistake, then you just like play it off like, I totally meant to make a mistake because I want to show you how to problem solve. And so, yeah, Dr. B made a mistake. Gosh, I didn't have enough candy hearts for everybody because I ate them all before I got here. But you know what? I'm going to bring some more tomorrow. And the kids will be like, yeah, okay, cool. And then they'll ask you all week, like, why you ate all the candy hearts. And you'll be like, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of stressed because I'm a teacher. Anyway, have a good night. I love you guys. I'll catch you next time. Pray for my finger to heal. And I'll see you next time.